Good day. Today is Wednesday, 8th of October 2025, and I hope you've all been well. It's been almost a month since the last upload, but there is a very good reason for that. Today we're launching the new thing, a new update called the Quarterly Spotlight. So every 3 months, every quarter, we'll have a big focus, including an article, discounts, and persistent updates with content on the topic of the Spotlight. In today's video, we will be going over the Quarterly Spotlight article, exploring the idea of scan-in. What is belief importance theory and how it works? Let's begin our exploration together. What separates those from who achieve success and those who don't? The answer lies in the two fundamental forces that drive human motivation: belief and importance. Belief importance theory, or shortened Belimp, was developed by Professor K.V. Petrides at London Psychometric Laboratory. Belimp theory is a psychological map for understanding human success. Why some people succeed while others struggle. Why some goals energize us while others leave us paralyzed. And how can we deliberately shift our frame of reference to unlock achievement? This is the power of this framework. So, to begin understanding this framework, we first need to answer three key questions. What is belief? What is importance? And how do they work together to bring in this understanding? First, belief. A belief is a descriptive knowledge, a mental shortcut of sorts that allows us to make quick decisions. It is a library of past experiences, events, and solutions that we have stored that have served their purpose, and we use them on a continuous basis, sort of functioning like a cognitive library that helps us draw on our existing knowledge and come to quick solutions. The body has evolved to maintain equilibrium. Our heart rate, our breathing rate, our sleep pattern, our food pattern, everything that we do out of habit. Most of things are automatic and they resist change. They need to stay in a certain range for us to be satisfied, for the body to be happy. The same principle applies to beliefs. They're psychological systems that resist change. We don't like to change our beliefs. They remain consistent because any change would disrupt this natural psychological equilibrium. This explains a concept like cognitive dissonance. When contradictory evidence appears that goes against our belief systems, we follow the path of least resistance. We tend to reject that new evidence. So this makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Those who could develop strong belief systems survived. First, we trust our parents because we depended on them for our survival. And then we trust the community and adhere to its norms because we're social creatures that depend on society to support our existence. So in this sense, it makes sense why it's so hard to override ingrained, deeply rooted belief systems. The same way with beliefs about yourself. Belief represents one axis of this psychological framework, right? It is the belief of achieving something, right? The second, also critical aspect is the importance, the actual desire to achieve that. So to what extent do you want the thing that you're pursuing? So importance represents the second axis, and it is the desire to attain what you want. So the priority that you set upon achieving the goal, right? To what extent do you desire outcome, to what extent and what magnitude do you want an outcome to be? So this is your inner drive that fuels action. It motivates you. So importance is neither purely cognitive nor purely emotional. It's a combination of both. It's a combination of both systems that create this feeling of importance. Something is important and creates agency and drive for action. So the reason why importance is a combination, it's a motivational force, which is a combination of two systems, one emotional and the other cognitive, is because purely cognitive motivation does not work. You cannot reason someone into desire. Desire has to come from within. Purely cognitive desire does not work. It does not fuel action. It's a rational decision without agency. On the other hand, purely emotional desires, they lead to impulsive, counterproductive behaviors, which can then cost you in the long term. So importance is the combination of both emotional and rational reasons for action. So you tame the fuel of emotion by applying reason, and then you direct and push it forward. Effective motivation requires both emotion and reason to generate productive behavior and result in positive outcomes, because you need the emotional fuel to drive the action and rational oversight to ensure that things don't get out of hand, because purely emotional behavior can be destructive because it's a very powerful force. Motivation operates through three distinct mechanisms. First is activation, so the first step upon taking a goal, so decision to engage in something. Then it is persistence, so continuing to pursue that goal and keeping the flame of motivation fueled through long term to achieve that goal. And then the intensity, so intensity with which you pursue that goal, the extra mile that you go towards in achievement of that specific goal. Importance in this aspect measures all three domains. So it measures all three: activation, persistence, and intensity. And this is the final result. How important a goal is for you is the combination of all three. Consider common psychological states: high belief but low importance. In this case, a person is very sure of themselves that they can achieve the goal, but are unmotivated because they lack engagement with a specific pursuit. Or on the other hand, low belief but high importance. So a person really wants to achieve, be successful in the domain, but is unsure of themselves. In this case, both states prevent achievement, but for completely different reasons. In one case, the person is unmotivated, and in the other case, the person is unsure of himself. When belief and importance are mapped together, they create a psychological framework allowing to understand what psychological barrier is preventing achievement. This is the foundation of the Belimp theory. The Belimp framework maps belief on the vertical axis and importance on the horizontal axis, thus creating four distinct quadrants of psychological states with their respective traits and characteristics. First comes the motivation quadrant. This is the state of high belief and high importance. In this case, the individual feels highly competent and highly values the goal. This combination produces deep, sustained effort and outcomes, high outcomes. Picture a director or a CEO who is deeply committed to their vision, believes in the strategic organization of the company. This is where conscientiousness, drive, and achievement comes from. This is the peak achievement quadrant. Second comes the hubris quadrant. So high belief but low importance. In this quadrant, you have capability without motivation. These individuals possess the skills but lack the will to push beyond their comfort zone. So they're comfortable where they are and don't have the drive to keep on improving. For example, a skilled professional who is already competent in what they do and refuses to push beyond the boundaries. So it's competence without effort. The belief is present, but the motivational fuel is absent. So the desire, the drive to improve is absent. Third comes the depression quadrant. This is characterized by low belief but high importance. In this case, there is a strong desire to achieve the goal, but limited confidence to do so. This is where self-doubt, performance anxiety, and fears become dominant. So picture an entrepreneur who is just starting out, has a grand vision, but is afraid that their lack of skills will hinder them. right? And being paralyzed by that. The motivation is there to get that achievement, but the belief acts as a constraining force preventing that achievement. Fourth is the apathy quadrant. In the apathy quadrant, we have low belief and low importance. Here, there is a lack of motivation and belief, so something that is of low value and inconsequential. This pursuit will generate minimal effort and will not yield any dividends. An example could be an employee who is disengaged from the organizational goals and does not feel part of the effort, right? So this will limit the amount of action that the person will take, most likely nothing. The critical insight is that these quadrants are not classifications. So psychological states, even though being difficult to change, they can still shift based on context, intervention, and persistent work. So understanding which quadrant applies to which domain of life is quite important, so you can then strategize and potentially change your outlook on that specific quadrant and see what kind of shift in context and perspective you require to achieve the results you wish. Belimp theory becomes practically applied through the instrument developed by Professor K.V. Petrides, which is scan-in. With this instrument, you can diagnose the motivational system of an individual to see in which quadrant and in which domain they fall into. Picture medical technologies like an MRI, a CT scan, etc. These technologies make the body, like the invisible parts of the body, visible. The same thing applies with scan-in and psychological states. So it makes the invisible motivational system of an individual visible. It maps it onto a report, creating a detailed map of belief and importance for each domain in an individual's life. The instrument measures 17 distinct life domains: family, finance, health, and other. This reveals domain-specific patterns, so an individual might occupy the motivation quadrant, a high belief and high importance in their career, but a depression quadrant in their health, so low belief but high importance, right? So this provides a view across the entire spectrum of domains. So the same person can inhabit different quadrants depending on area of life. So let's bring this full circle. We've explored what are beliefs, our deeply rooted shortcuts that help us maintain balance and equilibrium in our psychological states. We've examined what is importance, the emotional fuel that drives action. And we've mapped on the 4 psychological states that occur when these two forces interact: motivation, depression, hubris, and apathy. But here's a critical insight. Belimp theory is not about living in the motivation quadrant all the time. So always high action, high intensity, high belief, high motivation, right? That is not the goal, because each quadrant has its own strengths. So it is valuable to be in different quadrants depending on your life circumstance. For example, hubris quadrant brings boldness and quick action. The depression quadrant heightens self-awareness and empathy. And even apathy has its own uses because it functions as a neutral gear for that specific domain in life, waiting for an emergence of an actual goal. So it's a low pressure space that brings in like sort of what wants to be collapsed by an actual goal, an actual pursuit that you will value. The goal isn't perfection. It's understanding where you are, why you're there, and navigating all 4 quadrants with intent and purpose. With scan-in, we at London Psychometric Laboratory have made this invisible architecture visible. We've given you a mirror to your own motivational system, a tool for dissolving the psychological barriers that keep us trapped in a state of underachievement. By shining light on these states, you're unlocking energy reserves that you didn't even know you've had. So here's my question to you. Where do you stand on the Belimp map? Which beliefs are holding you back? And which areas of your life have you convinced yourself don't matter? Which quadrant are you living in right now? And is that where you want to be? At London Psychometric Laboratory, the commitment is clear: spreading power of psychological insight, bringing agency back to the individual, and helping people understand themselves at the deepest level. Because when you understand the architecture of your motivation, transformation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Welcome to New Horizons. I hope you enjoyed the segment. Stay tuned and keep in touch.